Hello again guys, I'm back from another hiatus and back for a new video. This upload will be my first for the summer and we're going to start it off with a ranking video. This video we're going to be ranking each Cartoon Network era from best to worst. The places selected will be based off of both my slight influence and opinion and analytics and facts showing of which eras perform best and worst. I'm going to do an analysis of each era by chronological order and then rank them at the end of the video best to worst. Also, before we get to the ranking, we're going to set some ground rules. Number 1, the eras of Cartoon Network I'll be using are the Checkerboard era, Powerhouse era, City era, Yes era, Noods era, and Check It eras 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 respectively. If you wanted me to do the short-lived Starburst era, too bad. It didn't last long enough or merely get recognized enough to count as an era. I consider it a transitional era considering it shares attributes from both the Checkerboard and Powerhouse eras. Number 2, the ways we'll measure the quality of each era are ratings, aesthetic and style, show variety, and nostalgia or memorability. And finally, number 3, no ongoing eras will be ranked as they're still in progress, so that means no dimensional era. And again, I'll remind you guys, this is my opinion, but there are some facts and evidence in this ranking video. So please, do not get too offended if this list isn't exactly how you pictured it to look. Now, with that out of the way, we can get down to the countdown. So, let's begin. First up, we have the Checkerboard era. The Checkerboard era is the initial and first era of Cartoon Network, lasting from its launch in October 1992 to 1997. It didn't really have a majority of cartoons we knew from the company today, as the network was still trying to find itself, and exactly what kind of cartoons they wanted to broadcast. Show variety-wise, they had aired shows from the Warner Brothers, MGM, and Hanna-Barbera libraries, and aired numerous franchises and series on the network 24/7. The bumpers' overall design followed the scheme of, well, a checkerboard, hence the name of the era itself. I honestly don't expect a lot of people to feel nostalgic about this era because the ratings at the time were considerably low considering the network had just entered the market, and there were a number of cartoon giants like Nickelodeon and Disney around. The network hadn't really took off until 1994, but, to give it some credit, it did see the pilot of the hit show Dexter's Laboratory aired during the era's run. It also saw the creation of the What a Cartoon Show, which would come to bring excellent cartoons I'll be talking about later. To generalize, it was the start for the soon-to-be legendary Cartoon Channel, but compared to the other eras, it doesn't seem to hold its own too well. Ratings-wise, I'll give it a 2.5 out of 5, style and aesthetic I'll give it a 3 out of 5, show variety I'll give it a 4 out of 5, and nostalgia I'll give it a 2 out of 5. That averages to about an overall score of 3 out of 5. Now, on to the next era. Next up, we have the Powerhouse era. The Powerhouse era definitely has more popularity than the Checkerboard era. It lasted from 1997 to 2004, and as I said, due to the What a Cartoon Show, it had brought now prevalent Cartoon Network shows otherwise known as the Cartoon Cartoons. It saw the release of Cartoon Fridays, which basically was a block that was shown every Friday night for new episodes of main cartoons. And many people remember it and say to enjoy it as shown from the many reviews, retrospects, and more. Other notable blocks that had emerged were Adult Swim in 2001 and Toonami in 1997. Boomerang, my personal favorite block and channel until 2015, had become its own channel as a sister channel for Cartoon Network in 2000. For sure, in terms of popularity and show variety, this era had it all. Shows like Ed, Edd n Eddy, Dexter's Lab, the Powerpuff Girls, and Courage the Cowardly Dog, and many others represent the company itself due to their popularity alone. In terms of design, it followed a very cartoony aesthetic taking place in numerous settings with vibrant colors and cameos from notable characters featured on the network's most popular shows. It's also somewhat used the checkerboard style, but only in regards to the logo and not much else. The ratings were sky high and some of the best ratings in the company's entire history, and if you don't believe me when I say nostalgic, look up any cartoon rant or retrospective. I promise you'll see so many people praise this era for the nostalgia of it. Ratings-wise, it gets a 5 out of 5, aesthetic and style gets a 3.5 out of 5, show variety it gets a 5 out of 5, and nostalgia it also gets a 5 out of 5. That averages to about a 4.5 out of 5 overall. So this era, I say Cartoon Network certainly was doing a good job at this point, and I'm sure the praise for this era will be continuing on for quite a while. Now, on to the next era. Next up, we have the Saiyan City era. This era lasted from 2004 to 2006 and brought in a new era of cartoons to the Cartoon Network library, and though some of the shows had gotten discontinued during this time, Reruns were still prevalent during this point, so a majority of the shows from the Powerhouse era did remain in the upcoming shows such as Foster Home for Imaginary Friends, Camp Lazlo, Juniper Lee, Samurai Jack, Teen Titans, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, and many others. This expanded the variety tenfold and ensured the demographic would have many types of shows to watch during this era's lifespan. In regards to design, it was revolutionary. It had a CG city with Cartoon Network characters inhabiting the setting. Not only did it look nice and realistic, it also meant for good bumpers, because it meant the opportunity that characters from different franchises had the chance to interact with each other in an open environment, which in itself was f***ing awesome. It felt like a surreal reality that the viewer could get invested in. In terms of nostalgia, along with the generation of shows, the generation of viewers had changed by that point over a period of time. The Anis have grown up a bit, and some of the younger viewers had come in by that point. Nostalgia honestly varies person to person depending on when they began to watch the network. In terms of ratings, they were still moderately high. The reason they weren't too high was because of the progressive but slow decline in viewings in cartoons at the time. Not to say the ratings were abysmal, because they were great. In terms of ratings, it gets a 4 out of 5, aesthetic and style gets a 5 out of 5, show variety gets a 5 out of 5, and nostalgia gets a 4 out of 5. That gives it a 5 out of 5 overall for the City era. Due to the numerous qualities of this era and how revolutionary, new, and good it was, I would consider it to be one of the best. Now on to the next era.
This is Cartoon Network.
Next up, we have the Yes era. This era lasted from 2006 to 2007, and the lifespan for this era seemed to be narrow and didn't last as long as many of the others. Despite this, I will not consider it to be a transitional era considering it lasted for a whole 2 years, whereas the Starburst era I mentioned earlier lasted for only a couple of months. Although this era did have some cartoons from the City era still on air, it also brought in some new ones such as Ben 10, Johnny Test, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Chowder, and some others. It is not the best era for sure. At this time, Stuart Snyder had become the CEO of Cartoon Network, and let's just say, he wasn't really doing the best job. Even if the shows I listed were new to the library, it doesn't excuse the fact that not only the shows that had been airing before had been taken off the air, such as the Powerpuff Girls in 2005 and Johnny Bravo in 2004, before the era had even begun, but the shows I just listed, at least 2 of them you may not even know or remember. That's because the shows were mediocre at most. In terms of design, they were literally just some bumpers with a red background with some annoying dialogue from some forgettable character or god forbid cheese. That concluding with the bumper ending with the narrator saying yes in some spontaneous way, hence the name. The only redeemable thing I can say about this era in regards to bumpers was that one remix it had. And we cannot mention this era of Cartoon Network without the infamous summer of 2007 that followed. I'm really not going to get into that right now because that's a video in itself, but one thing remains clear. This era of Cartoon Network simply was not too good. In terms of ratings, it gets a 2.5 out of 5. Aesthetic and style gets a 1 out of 5, show variety it gets a 2 out of 5, and nostalgia it gets a 0 out of 5. The overall rate for this era sits at an astounding 1.5 out of 5. Now, on to the next era. Next up we have the Noods era.
Noods.
I've heard this era get quite a lot of backlash and hate over the years. I can see where people are coming from to a degree, but I can't entirely agree with that statement. This era started in 2008 and ended 2 years later like the Yes era, meaning again, it did not last as long. It might have been due to low ratings as no one was really watching Cartoon Network at the time. The culprits? Other networks that were doing better at the time and the bane of this network's existence. Something that defied Cartoon Network's purpose as a channel as a whole. Its absolute shit programming and presentation was more awkward than a kid going through puberty at a singing performance. It made no sense! These shows were live action shows. That's right, you guys know what I'm talking about. CN Real. Destroyville Destroy, Do What Would Happen, Brain Rush, all of that cancer to grace the dying network at a time of need. These personified how bad a network would become if it was on its last leg. I mean, anyone with a common sense over an IQ of 12 could understand that live action shows on Cartoon Network makes absolutely no sense. It's like putting a Christian in a mosque. Not to mention Toonami was also cancelled. I don't even have to elaborate on how bad of shows these were. It's like, what's a good show coming from an atrocious idea? A miracle from God, which unfortunately for this network did not happen. Okay, sorry there. I went on a little tangent. I'm sorry, it's not like me to go on an outburst like that on such a short notice, but my god, it was so bad. And for a network that was doing fine before, it just went to shit in the flip of a coin. I couldn't believe it could have possibly happened, but anyways, before I accidentally just completely lose my mind, let's just move on to the appearance of the network in general at that point. To be quite honest, I actually kind of like the theme of this era's bumpers. It takes a new toy figure and utilizes CG like the City era, except this time it's in a white blank environment. It's colorful, and it presents numerous Cartoon Network characters in a colored nude figures, commonly accompanied by an 8-bit remix-like music. I know, so late 2000s, early 2010s. Doesn't really roll off the tongue too well. Anyways, in terms of design, I honestly like it, so it's a 4 out of 5. In terms of show variety, 0 out of 5. Nostalgia-wise, to be honest, I remember watching Cartoon Network during this time, but I was fairly young and I don't remember it that well. So I have to give nostalgia about a 2.5 out of 5. And ratings, 1 out of 5. It's obvious. Overall, this era gets a 2 out of 5. The show's variety and nostalgia is complete shit. But at least we can agree it looked sorta good back then because the concept was pretty good. Now, for the love of God, on to the next era. Now we're in the newest era of Cartoon Network as of current, the Check It era. That's the Dimensional era. Shut up! Did you not hear number 3? Anyways, this era by far lasted the longest. Now at the making of this video, it would have been a year from a decade old if it was still going on today. No era has lasted that long. Is it because it was successful and not worth changing? Or is it because Cartoon Network was so damn lazy they haven't bothered switching it up for a whole 9 years? Well, let's review and see. To start, this era had the releases of Cartoon Institute, which led to the Cartoon Revolution in the early 2010s. This led to the release of currently loved shows such as The Regular Show, Adventure Time, The Amazing World of Gumball, Steven Universe, Uncle Grandpa, and some others. Many love to hate on this era and say it was the worst of Cartoon Network because of Teen Titans Go, but to be quite honest, I believe it's been said time and time again that the show has received just about enough hate at this point. It's to the degree where the haters have actually gotten more annoying than the show itself. So, I'm going to be honest with you guys, my fans. I couldn't love you if I wasn't honest, but if you still hate on Teen Titans Go 6 years after its initial release, stop. You're wasting your time, and no offense, but you're actually kind of being really immature. If you hate the show so much, ignore it like I did. You can look at the era for the better things it's done. Not to say that the era has been perfect, yes, Teen Titans Go is a problem, but it's pretty tame now. The real problems lie within things like the Boomerang rebrand, which I've stated on numerous occasions I despise. The scheduling had gotten worse, and due to the lack of show variety over time around 2016 to 2017, when the Cartoon Revolution shows such as Regular Show and Adventure Time had ended, ratings had dropped to an all-time low. In terms of design, it has actually gone through numerous phases, hence the 1.0, 2.0, and so forth. It initially dropped the checkerboard feature with a more modern look, with an implementing of CG and tiles. Over time, however, it started to follow a pattern of neon and bright colors, usually using pink, blue, and yellow. This can be somewhat creative, but a majority of the time the bumpers look like acid trips. I'm not even one prone to visual sickness, but these bumpers are way too much on my eyes sometimes. If you were to ask me, I'd say 1.0 and 2.0 were the best. In terms of nostalgia, I have the most for this era considering I grew up with the cartoons in this era most avidly. I remember the promos, bumpers, and shows at the time. Some great, and some that reminded me of those f***ing live-action shows from 2008 and 9. Now, to rate this channel, I'll say the ratings get a 2 out of 5, the aesthetic and style get a 3 out of 5, show variety also gets a 3 out of 5, and finally, nostalgia gets a 4 out of 5. That averages to about a 3.5 out of 5. This era has its ups and downs, but ultimately it's been holding up pretty well these past years. All I ask is for Cartoon Network to change it up sometimes. Now, on to rank these eras best to worst. To conclude the analysis of these eras of Cartoon Network, it's time to rank them all from best to worst. By far, the worst of these was the Yes era at 6th place with a score of 1.5 out of 5. The reason is because the bumpers were lazy and unimaginative, the shows were forgettable, the poor decisions made by Stuart Snyder resulted in the network's bad ratings at the time, and no one even really remembers this era. If you do, you probably don't even mind forgetting about it. 5th place goes to the Noods era, which by far had the worst show variety and choices, not to mention the live action shows on a cartoon channel. Many shows had been cancelled in favor of new ones, but a majority were mediocre. That, and the only plus that gives it a 2.5 out of 5 was the bumpers were actually pretty good. 4th place goes to the Checkerboard era. While its library was vast, it still had a foundation point for the fundamental building of Cartoon Network at the time. The library consisted of libraries of cartoons that weren't even made by the company itself. It wasn't even until 1995 where the company began to try to manufacture their own cartoons, which started the revolution, which gives it a plus. The style was creative, but you can only go far when your bumpers follow the same pattern of a checkerboard. The ratings were mediocre at the time, but I can give it excuses of the fact that the network was setting itself up to become something of its own image. Giving this its 3 out of 5 grade. 3rd place with 3.5 out of 5 is the Check It era. This modern era had tried its best to stand the test of time and remain for 9 years, but it had its ups and downs. There were current successes as the Cartoon Revolution in the beginning of the era's run, to the rebranded Boomerang and the overuse of Teen Titans Go. Once the original Cartoon Revolution shows had come to an end, except for Gumball, Cartoon Network had sought newer and fresher shows for the demographic. Some attempts succeeded and some failed miserably, but to be frank, the Checkered era was pretty much a mixed bag and it was all experimental. In regards to style, it had went through numerous phases, but some of those annoying neon colors started to appear like it felt that I was on LSD sometimes. It kinda reminded me of a certain network. Anyways, in terms of nostalgia, I've seen everything this network's been through over the years and I have fond memories of its shows that came and went. Because of these attributes, I give this show a 3.5 out of 5. Coming in at a close second with a 4.5 out of 5 is the Powerhouse era. Being honest, this era had a lot going good for it, and it had a good job providing entertainment for its viewers during its time. The variety was plentiful, and the popularity was sky high thanks to the cartoons. The only thing holding it back just shy of number 1 is because, in my opinion, the bumpers are a little bit generic. The colors are vibrant, and the melody for the bumper is great, but a majority of the time, the setting is usually some miscellaneous environment with vibrant colors and Cartoon Network characters. Other than that small complaint for the bumpers and the theme, this era was sheer excellence, and I believe many of you would agree. And at number 1 with a solid 5 stars is the Saiyan City era. I don't exactly know if this would be predictable or not, but I believe this era has it all. It had a variety of many different blocks, shows, and the theme for the bumpers as well as the aesthetic was pure genius. The idea of having a large variety for numerous Cartoon Network characters to interact with each other is a fun concept that had come to life. Not to mention the city itself looked amazing. It had a majority of the shows from the Powerhouse era plus new shows that were up and coming. The ratings weren't the highest, but the reason was because of the cartoons that were getting progressively more unpopular over time. That applies for every company, not just Cartoon Network. But in general, this show has everything to offer, and I'm sure that this era has to be the best era Cartoon Network's history has ever seen, bar none. That is what gives it number 1. Alright guys, thanks for watching my video, and again for the 4,000th time, I'm sorry for the lack of uploads and I'm glad to be posting again. Again, I'll just say this, if this list didn't turn out the way you wanted, do not get offended. Some of the results on this list are based off of my opinion, and it's impossible to come up with a definitive answer. It's inevitable that people have contrasting opinions, and if you can respect that, thank you. But if you want to leave a constructive criticism in the comments below to further help improve this channel, please do so. Sorry for the lack of upload, by the way, considering I've only uploaded Cartoon Network videos back to back. But I promise you, I'll be making something else next time. Thanks for watching, and by the way, check out my Discord server. I left it on my channel, and it'll be in the link in the description below. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and see y'all next time.
Rise from your grave.